Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm back with 4 brand new Valentine's Day decor DIYs. All of the projects today are more pink toned projects, so if you're into that look, then I really think that you'll enjoy today's video. Now let's go ahead and get started. For the first DIY today, I'm going to be using one of these square signs from Dollar Tree. I did get this back in the fall, as to why this says Happy Fall. I just really liked the shape of this sign and the frame around the sign. I'm going to be just removing the backing to this piece, and then I'm just going to save that for a future project. And then I'm also going to be removing the beads that are on the top of the sign because I'm not using them for this project, and I will save the beads for a future project. Next, I'm painting the entire frame with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 different coats of this paint, and then I'm also using this grapevine heart. This is from Dollar Tree last year, and then these little button stickers also from Dollar Tree. And after my frame was all dry, I decided that I wanted to place these button stickers on the front of the frame, so I just started pressing them on. I wish I would have applied them before I painted the frame, but I didn't decide that I wanted to use them until after the fact, so it would have been a little bit easier to put them on and then paint the frame, but that's not how things worked out for me. So I'm just putting them around the entire frame, and then once I have them all stuck on, then I'm just using that same Waverly paint and plaster, and I did do 2 coats over top of all of the buttons just to make sure that they were nice and covered up, because obviously I don't want the blue color for this project. Then once they were all dry, I took some of my Java colored chalk paint from Folk Art on a paintbrush, and I just dry brushed this color over top of all of those sticker buttons and then around all of the sides of the frame so that it'll give it a really nice rustic, distressed look. Next, I'm using 7 of these larger popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree, and I took one of them and I just made sure that I measured it down to size so that it will fit on the inside of the back of my frame. And to cut them down, I just used some of my scissors and cut the 2 round edges off of the stick, and then I use that piece as a guide to finish cutting the rest of the 6 popsicle sticks down to size. Once I had all of them cut, then I painted all 7 of them with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I only did 1 quick coat on just the front side that I'm going to be using for each stick. Once that paint was all dry, I then used some of my Java colored paint and I dry brushed that around all of the edges of my popsicle sticks to make them look old and distressed. Then it was time to start attaching all of my popsicle sticks on the inside of the back of my frame. To do that, I just placed hot glue on each end of my popsicle sticks and then just pressed them into the back of the frame. And I did have it going with the plaster color towards the front, obviously, because that's going to be the front of my frame. And I continued to do that for all 7 of my sticks. Then I'm going to be using some of these really small pink flowers from this floral stem that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. And I thought this would be perfect to place these on my wreath. So I just cut the little flowers off of their stems and then used hot glue to attach them to each side of my grapevine wreath. And I left a space at the very top of the heart because I am going to be placing a bow up there and I did not want flowers up there. So I'm just continuing to do this over and over again until I have all of my flowers glued onto my wreath. Next, I cut 2 pieces of jute and I'm just creating a really simple bow with this and just cutting the tail ends to the length that I want and then hot gluing that bow right in the center of my heart on the little part that comes down. And then for the very last step, I'm using hot glue on the back side of my mini grapevine heart wreath and then just pressing that down into the center of my frame. And this is my framed heart wreath all finished. I really love how this one turned out. It was super easy to do and I'm just loving all of the tones of this one put together. Moving right on into DIY number 2. For this one, I'm using one of these mini wooden candlesticks from Hobby Lobby. These do come in, I believe, a pack of 4, but I'm only using one of these for today's project. And I'm first starting by using a really small paintbrush and I'm painting on this wood tint from Folk Art in the color Walnut. I did this in small sections. I would just paint on the stain or wood tint, and then I would take an old cloth and then just wipe away the excess tint. And I continued to do this until I had the entire wood candlestick all stained. For this project, I'm also using this mini wooden house that says Hello Spring. This is from the Target dollar spot last year, and I just really don't think I'm ever going to use it, so I decided to make it over. I first started by just peeling off that dollar sticker off of the back, and then I painted the entire house with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 different coats of this paint. And I'm also using this unfinished wood heart. This did come from Dollar Tree this year in one of their wooden heart packs, and I'm using the unfinished one. They did have some that were painted, but I wanted mine to be stained, so I'm using that same folk art wood tint in the color Walnut, just painted it on with my same small brush, and then just wiped away the excess stain with my old towel. I'm also using another unfinished wood heart from that same heart pack, but this one is just a little bit smaller than the one that I stained. And for this one, I'm painting it in the color Vintage Victorian from Folk Art. And then once that was all dry, it was time to start assembling everything. So I hot glued my stained heart on the front of my house, and then I hot glued my pink heart right on top of the larger stained heart. Then I thought it would be really cute to add some jute around the front of the house and around those 2 hearts that I attached. So I just wrapped the jute around about 3 times randomly, and then to secure the jute, I used some hot glue along the back side of the house. And then for the very last step, I just needed to add my house to my candlestick, so I used some hot glue on the top of the candlestick and then attached that to the bottom center of my house. And actually there's one more step. I did want to add a little bit of detail around the house and just make it pop around the edges. So I used some of my Java colored paint from Folk Art and just very lightly dry brushed that around all of the edges of my house. And this is what it looks like all finished. It turned out super cute. Again, another really easy project, and I think it would look really good on either a shelf or a tiered tray. Next is DIY number 3, and for this one I'm going to be using this small glass bottle from Hobby Lobby, and then the first thing I'm going to be doing to the bottle is painting on matte Mod Podge. I've heard that if you paint Mod Podge on glass before painting it, it helps the paint from chipping away, so I'm going to be trying that method out today. And once the Mod Podge was dry, or at least I thought it was dry, I then painted on the Waverly paint in the color Plaster, and I did do 2 coats of that paint. Now, I don't think I let my Mod Podge dry completely because my paint started making like a crackling effect, which I ended up liking in the long run, so I did not fix it, but I'm not sure if maybe I did something wrong or if I just didn't wait for the Mod Podge to dry fully. So since I liked the crackle look, I did think that maybe if I added some of the Java colored paint over it, it would make some of those cracks pop, and I am gonna be having this look a little bit distressed, so it kind of went with the look I was going for anyways. And I did focus some of that paint on the edges of the bottles and then as well as the very top of the bottle. Next, I'm using these 4 wooden letter beads. These ones I think I picked up at Michael's, but you can pretty much get these at any craft store. I'm using 2 X's and 2 O's, and I'm stringing them so that they say XOXO onto a piece of jute. I did tie a knot on the end of the jute so that my beads would stay in place. Once I have them all strung on, I'm just cutting off the excess jute, and then I'm going to be wrapping it around the very top of my bottle and then tying that in a knot so that it stays secure on the top of my bottle. I'm then adding some of these greenery stems from Hobby Lobby inside of my bottle, and then I'm also adding some of these little heart picks. These were from Dollar Tree this year, and I just randomly placed them in between all of the greenery. And this is the project all finished. Only a few steps for this one. It's super easy and another great project for a shelf or tiered tray. Now for the 4th and final DIY today, I am going to be using one of these unfinished wood hearts from Dollar Tree. I did pick this one up last year, so I'm not sure if they have them again this year. And then the first thing that I'm doing is removing the jute hanger at the top of the heart so that it's a little bit easier for me to paint my heart. Once I have that removed, I'm going to be using my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut, and I'm using a paintbrush to apply it to one of the slats on the side. And then once I have it all painted on, I am going to be using an old cloth to wipe away any excess tint. And as you can see here, I am painting the tint on the wood pieces that are in between my wood slats as well. After I had all of the extra wood tint wiped away, then I moved on and started painting the next slat of my heart. And for this one, I'm using my Folk Art paint in the color Vintage Victorian. And I did do 2 coats of this paint since it was a little bit more sheer. And then once I had that all painted on, I did wait for it to dry before I moved on to the next portion. It's because I'm using that wood tint again in between the wood slats. I wanted to make sure that that paint was dry so they didn't mix together. And then before I started painting any more pieces, I wanted to make sure I had my wood tint applied to all of the wood pieces in between my slats. So once I had that on, I decided I was just going to go ahead and stain the other end of my heart. I used that same walnut color, again, wiped away the excess, and then once that was all finished, for the last slat here in the middle, I'm using my Waverly paint in the color Plaster. Once all of my paint and wood tint dried, I'm then taking this piece of burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree and I'm cutting it down to where I can wrap it around just the 2 painted slats in the middle, and then I'm cutting it down so that it's a little bit thinner as well, and then fraying out all of the edges so that it looks a little bit more rustic. Once I have that done, I'm then wrapping that piece of burlap through the slats, and then I'm going to be hot gluing the 2 ends of that burlap ribbon along the back side of my heart. Now I'm going to be using some of these little white flowers that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I am just picking them right off their stems, and then I'm going to be cutting the flowers so that they are just one flower. I think it's a little bit easier to work with them this way. And then I'm placing the hot glue right on the stem and then just pulling up the burlap and placing the flower underneath. I continued to do this numerous times until I had flowers all the way across the burlap. Then I also added some of these other greenery pieces that I also got from Hobby Lobby. I just made them really small and then I hot glued each one of them in between all of my white flowers. I think they added a lot more dimension and texture to my piece. Then I'm going to be using this Love wooden cutout. This is from Joann Fabrics and I'm painting it with my Waverly paint in Plaster. Once that was all painted and before I start gluing on this Love word, I did want to add a hanger back onto my piece. So I used 2 pieces of jute and I just strung them through the very top holes that were already pre-drilled into my heart and just tied those to the length that I wanted my hanger to be. Then for the last step in this project, I'm using some hot glue on the back side of my Love word cutout and just gluing that right over top of the burlap. This is what my Love wooden heart wreath looks like all finished. I did end up placing this in the center of a wreath I already have and I really love the look of it. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I would love to hear in the comments down below which project from today's video was your favorite and if you plan on decorating for Valentine's Day this year. Thank you so much for watching.